everyone, and welcome to the California Department of Education's Literacy Knowledge Building video series. In this video, Richard Gifford from the California Department of Education will discuss the research behind California's Dyslexia Guidelines. Before we begin, let's go over a brief bit of background on the Literacy Knowledge video series. This is a series of videos on critical topics in literacy birth through grade 12. It was developed by the California Department of Education and literacy experts in the state literacy team, and it is complementary to the work of the Federal Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grants. You can learn more about the CLSD grants by going to the California Department of Education's website and searching for CLSD. The purpose of this video series is to provide guidance and resources on critical topics in literacy, to support the work of the CLSD grants, and to build coherence between California's literacy guidance documents, standards, and frameworks, and how they all support literacy. A major objective of the CLSD grant is to bring coherence between California's guiding documents, some of which you see here, like the California Preschool Learning Foundations, the Infant Toddler Learning and Development Foundations, the Practitioner's Guide for Educating English Learners with Disabilities, the Dyslexia Guidelines, and the California English Learner Roadmap. Other content area standards and frameworks support literacy as well. The videos produced in this series will illustrate the connections between all of these documents and also explain how the documents themselves support literacy development for our students. Videos will be produced over the course of the CLSD grant period. To be informed when new videos are posted, join the CLSD listserv by sending a blank email to join-california-states-development-program@mlist.cde.ca.gov. And now I will turn it over to Richard.
Dr. Wolf shared with us valuable information on how the study of the reading brain and dyslexia can help all students learn to read. And Kyle has covered some of the areas in which literacy research serves as a foundation for the California Department of Education's English Language Arts and English Language Development Framework. We'll continue now by taking a look at the California Dyslexia Guidelines, which provide recommendations on supporting students with dyslexia and other struggling readers. The guidelines are grounded in rigorous research on the reading development of typical readers, how it differs for students with dyslexia, and the most effective assessment, instructional, and support practices for this population. Today, we'll briefly highlight some of this research, and in a later webinar, we'll provide a broader overview of the dyslexia guidelines. The guidelines are informed by neuroscience research, including brain imaging studies that have helped make visible the differences between typically developing readers and readers with dyslexia. For example, the guidelines include the following findings from neuroscience research. Neural signatures of dyslexia are reliable, meaning that people who demonstrate the characteristics of dyslexia often have similar neural signatures or brain patterns during reading. And these neural signatures differ from those of typically developing readers. The neural signatures of dyslexia can help predict the risk of dyslexia. These neural signatures are also present in gifted students, but because their academic performance falls within the average range, they're often not identified with dyslexia. And perhaps most importantly, brain imaging studies have determined that with research-based intervention, the neural signatures of individuals with dyslexia can change so they resemble that of typically developing readers. In other words, these interventions can actually change the way students with dyslexia process text and significantly improve their reading proficiency. Many studies have investigated why individuals with dyslexia struggle to develop proficient reading skills. This research has revealed that dyslexia is a language learning disability and not due to problems with visual processing, as was once commonly believed. This robust scientific research base indicates that dyslexia impacts students' decoding ability because of phonological processing deficits. and this difficulty with decoding negatively affects reading comprehension. In other words, if students struggle to fluently decode the words on the page, they have fewer cognitive resources to comprehend what they are reading. These phonological processing deficits interfere with the ability of students to make the links between sounds and letters that are necessary for fluent reading and spelling. Research also demonstrates that early oral language difficulties often evolve into later reading problems. In a later webinar, we will have a more in-depth discussion of phonological processing and its role in dyslexia. The Dyslexia Guidelines cite research on the reading trajectories of students with and without dyslexia to emphasize the importance of early identification and intervention. This research demonstrates that differences in reading achievement are detectable as early as first grade, that this gap remains as the students reach adolescence, and early intervention has the potential to close the achievement gap in reading. The research based on dyslexia screening and assessment also indicates that it is important to look at multiple indicators for the following reasons. A variety of risk and protective factors can impact how dyslexia is expressed, and assessment is more accurate when it does not focus on a single indicator. In addition, a student's unique learning history can have an impact on specific indicators. For example, a student who has received intensive intervention may become relatively accurate at decoding individual words, but lack the fluency required for successful comprehension. And finally, a family history of dyslexia is a significant risk factor. Alignment between research and practice is critically important when providing reading instruction and intervention to students with dyslexia and other struggling readers. As we discussed previously, there is strong evidence on the effectiveness of early intervention if this intervention is aligned to research. For example, studies have demonstrated that up to 95% of struggling readers can reach average reading levels or better with research-aligned instruction. The Dyslexia Guidelines includes detailed information on the components of effective reading instruction and intervention that is grounded in research. This approach includes instruction that is evidence-based, multisensory, direct, explicit, structured, and sequential. And this instruction must cover phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Another name for this approach is structured literacy. Structured literacy includes instruction in phonology, sound symbol association, syllables, morphology, syntax, and semantics. You can see here how the components of structured literacy map to the elements of effective instruction for students with dyslexia we just discussed.
In the chart on the slide, phonology relates to phonemic awareness, sound symbol association relates to phonics and fluency, syllables relate to phonics and fluency, morphology relates to vocabulary and comprehension, syntax relates to fluency and comprehension, and semantics relates to vocabulary and comprehension.
Later in this webinar series, we'll provide more information on this type of instruction and concrete examples of how it looks in a classroom. Now, back to Jennifer.
Thank you, Richard. And thank you for viewing Connections to CDE Guidance Documents, Dyslexia Guidelines. Access the discussion questions to deepen your learning with your colleagues. And make sure to watch the next video in the series, Supporting English Learners with Disabilities. Thank you.